The man's name was Hazrat Sahibzada Abdul Latif radiyallahu anhu. He was one of the most famous religious scholars in Kabul, Afghanistan. He owed thousands of acres of land, very rich man. He came from a lineage of Hazrat Data Ganj Bakhsh. He had thousands of disciples. He was the favorite scholar of the king. Everybody knew him. In the year 1900, Hazrat Sahibzada Abdul Latif radiyallahu anhu read the book Aina Kamalat-e Islam. Right away he knew this is the man. This is the Messiah that the world has been waiting for. He did Bai'at right away. He sent his written Bai'at to Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wassalam. 2 years later, in 1902, he decided to go to Hajj. He travels 500 miles from Kabul to Lahore only to find out that Hajj is prohibited that year. There was plague in Punjab. The Ottoman government did not allow him to travel, so he said, let me go say salam to Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam according to the hadith. So he comes to Qadian, India. His conviction was such that he never had any doubt about the truth of Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, I believe in you like a man who's standing in front of Aftab, a full rising sun. That's how clearly I believe in you. His respect was such that in the afternoons he would join Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam for a walk. Qadian used to be a dusty place. When they came back from the walk, Hazrat Sahibzada Sahib would wait in his room for a while Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam would go to his quarter. And after a good 15-20 minutes, he would shake the dust off from his clothes. People asked him, why do you wait? Why don't you shake it off right away? He said, I find it disrespectful that I do it before Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam dusts his clothes off. So I give it enough time when I'm sure that the promised Messiah would have dusted his clothes by now. You know, his relationship was such that he joined Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam to his journey in Jehlam, and during that journey he started receiving revelations. Unko ilham hote the. He would receive an ilham, go to Pharaoh. Then he received an ilham, present your head. He knew what it meant. He shared with the people, they said, don't ever go back to Kabul. This is an ominous news. He said, I feel like my soil needs my blood. His conviction, his obedience was such that one day he finally, after 3 or 4 months, he asked Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salam, now let me go to Kabul. They both knew what it meant. Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam had received ample revelations that Sahibzada Abdul Latif was going to be a shaheed. Abdul Latif had heard from Allah that go present your head. That is obedience, that is conviction. Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam doesn't stop him, walks with him to the outskirts of Qadian, and after almost 2 miles, he says, all right, Khuda Hafiz, now it's time to leave. Hazrat Sahibzada Abdul Latif couldn't control himself. He just bent down and grabbed the feet of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam and started crying. Hazur said, Sahibzada Sahab, get up. He would not get up. He kept on holding on to his feet, and Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam said, Al-amru fawqul adab. He said, this is my command. And my command, you know, it is, he said, deference. I'm sorry. He said that this obedience that you have, my command supersedes that. And Hazrat Sahibzada Sahab just right away stood back up. And then they stayed in each other's embrace for a few minutes, and then he left. He went back to Kabul. Right away he was arrested. They put him in a dungeon. The same king, Habibullah, who he was one of his favorite scholars, now was after his life. He would ask him every day, renounce your faith in Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam, compromise. And Sahibzada Abdul Latif would say, I have seen him like Aftab, like rising sun. I actually invite all of you to accept him as well. So what did they do? They upped the ante. They put a chain around him. How much the chain weighed? Over 50 kilograms. You know, many of you came here. When you unload your luggage from the car tonight, think about it. A big luggage bag that typically is about 50 pounds, the big one. And you carry it for 30 seconds from the car to the room and your arms are tied. Hazrat Sahibzada Abdul Latif carried more load than that for 4 months, did not recant. They kept on coming at him. Compromise, stop, go back. He's like, not happening. I'm not going to compromise. There are difficulties. You want it good, you want conviction, you want to have the real deal, not easy. The birds did not get it easy. Coming to Kichan was not free. The scientists realized that along their path were eagles, the bird of the mountain. And eagles can fly up to 10,000 feet, so it's no escape. These birds would sometimes die of hunger, sometimes they would die of fatigue. These eagles would snatch their children, but the flock always made it through. Even though the eagle could take one or two, the birds were willing to give that price. However, on the other end, on a hot July day in 1903, the king had it enough. They gave him enough chances, and they decided that his punishment for believing in Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wassalam was not discrimination, was not to get him out of job. His punishment was not that somebody will vandalize his car. These are the things that we go through sometimes and we feel afraid. His punishment was death. They wrote it on a big piece of paper, worthy of death, put it around his neck. They made a hole through his nose and put a rope in there, and they tugged him, they pulled him in front of a jeering crowd. The same place where he was revered as the highest top-level scholar. Look at his sacrifice, his time, his wealth, his honor, and now he knows his life. And they're dragging him towards the execution ground. Makes you think of Faiz Ahmad Faiz. जिस धज से कोई मक्तल में गया वो शान सलामत रहती है, ये जान तो आनी जानी है, इस जान की तो कोई बात नहीं. He went to that execution ground with such majesty that actually he was walking fast, he was walking briskly. People said, why are you walking fast? He said, because I consider these chains as my ornaments, as my jewelry. And I'm walking fast because I want to meet my master. As they were stoning him, he was reciting the verse of Quran that I started with. Oh Allah, you are my protector in this world and in the hereafter. This was his resolve. Let death come to me in a state of submission to thy will and join me to the righteous. Hazrat Musleh Maud radhiyallahu anhu says, as they're pelting stones at him, he's praying for them. Oh Allah, bring them to the right path. And there is a reason he earned this from Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wassalam. Ay Abdul Latif, tere pe hazaron rahmatein hain कि तूने मेरी जिंदगी में ही अपने सिद्क का नमूना दिखाया. Oh Abdul Latif, thousands of blessings upon you because you've demonstrated your truthful example in my life. और जो लोग मेरी जमात में से मेरी मौत के बाद रहेंगे, here's a question for us. And those people who will join this movement after I'm gone, मैं नहीं जानता वो क्या काम करेंगे. I don't know what will be their stature of faith. Will they compromise or will they cave in? Will they fly or will they crawl? That's what Masih Maud alayhi salatu wassalam is saying to us, raising a question. So here's a question for us. When you truly love something, you make a sacrifice for it, don't you? You know, you want to attend a concert, you want to buy those shoes, you want certain iPod, whatever you want to love in life, you're willing to give every sacrifice, but are you making sacrifices for this movement? Are you living this spirit of Abdul Latif Shaheed? Do we make our 5 daily prayers or do we make a compromise? Do we shun intoxicants in our life or do we make a compromise? Do we always marry Ahmadi Muslims or do we make a compromise? Do we follow Khalifatul Masih or we make a compromise? Do we make sacrifices or do we make compromises? Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wassalam says, चूहे मत बनो, don't be rats, जो नीचे की तरफ जाते हैं, who always crave the earth. बुलंद परवाज कबूतर बनो जो आसमान की फ़िज़ा को अपने लिए पसंद करता है. Hazur says, be that high flying pigeon, that high flying bird that loves the heights of the skies. We are high flying birds. Your ancestors were high flying birds. Abdul Latif Shaheed was a high flying bird. Many of us, who come from other side of the world, we know the legacy of Sahibzada Abdul Latif, because this is how people would recognize Ahmadis. A student in the college, people would say, namazein bahut padhta hai, Ahmadi hoga. He always does his namaz, must be an Ahmadi. They will look at our fathers and their co-workers will say, sharab nahi peeta, rishwat nahi leta, Ahmadi hoga. He doesn't drink, he's not corrupt, must be an Ahmadi. They'll look at our mothers and they'll say, parda bahut acha karti hai, Ahmadi hogi. This was our distinction, my dear brothers. Slogans are not going to do it. Naron se kaam nahi chalega. This is real, this is very, very difficult. If you are listening to the same sermons of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih that I'm listening, then it's difficult. Our fathers and mothers, they did not flaunt their religiosity. People could just tell. People could tell from a mile that this is an Ahmadi. When somebody sees a high-flying crane, they could tell this is a different bird. Don't compromise your legacy for anything. This is our true, real tabligh. Hazrat Masih Maud Salam says, हमारी जमात अगर सब के सब हुजरों में भी बैठ जावें, तब भी दज्जाल को ज़वाल आ जाएगा. He says, all of you can go and lock yourself in closets. Even then Allah will defeat Dajjal. How does that happen? Through absolute obedience. What was Sahibzada Abdul Latif's legacy? Obedience. When his Imam said that this is what is destined for him, he didn't say, I'm not going back to Kabul. He knew what was coming. And now, sometimes we say, I'm not ready yet. When Khalifatul Masih says something, I just want to humbly submit to all of you, my very respected dear brothers and sisters, every time we say I'm not ready yet, we weaken the wings of our children. They will forget how to fly. Remember, those birds were bringing their young ones with them, because this kind of flight was not an innate behavior for those birds. It was a learned behavior. These parents were teaching them. And this is what it's all about. Why do we follow Hazrat Khalifatul Masih? Because ultimately that's a finger pointing to the moon. He's the one who helps us connect to Allah. And if you want Allah, Hazrat Masih Maud Salam says, वो जो दुनिया पे गिद्धों की तरह गिरते हैं उसका कुर्ब हासिल नहीं कर सकते. If you're going to fall on the pleasures of this earth like vultures, you're not going to be able to find Allah. We feel we are free. We are told. We are, no question about that. But this freedom is also calculated. We are birds on a leash. Try taking an inch more of that freedom that America gives you and you'll find out. You know exactly what I'm saying. There are things you can't say. There are things you can't do. There is a politically correct language and a barrier you never cross. We are birds on a leash. Try searching on Amazon, bird leashes. I'm not making it up, $5. They start selling them at $5 and they actually say, use it on young birds because they adapt to them much quicker when you use it on youth. You use it on a mature bird, he resists the leash. When a man says, I can't come to Jummah, bro, I'm very busy. My business is flourishing these days. That business is your leash. When a woman says, I can't wear my hijab at work, what will they say? It's a terrorist on an airline, so I take it off at aeroplane. That fear, my dear sister, is your leash. When a man says, I can't commit to wasiyat yet, there's so much to do. I have so much to sort out in my head, as if there is 100-year life left. That hesitation that we have is a leash. We're told these are impossible expectations. Who can do this in the world anymore? The life is too hard. Yes, it gets impossible. Those birds faced an impossible trial. It was not just the eagles up until 10,000 feet. What they realized that after the eagles, if you look at the map, from Siberia to Kichan, you can't get through without crossing the Himalayas. 20,000, 25,000, 29,000 feet is high Mount Everest. In Nepal, if you ask a Tibetan about Everest, they say, this is a mountain that no bird can fly over. That's the symbolism of Everest. It is impossible. The birds also faced an impossible choice. What did they do? Did they drag their feet or did they flap their wings? You know the answer. They got through to the eagles. Yes, the eagles snatched one or two of their babies, but they didn't stop there. A human being with all the gear that we have, 1 out of 10 people die trying to climb Everest. The best mountaineers, 1 out of 10. That's the toll. With all the oxygen cylinders, you spend just a few minutes on the summit. That's how harsh it is. If the birds just stopped flapping their wings, they will freeze in minus 55 temperature. But what do? They keep flapping their wings. They keep rising up to the challenge until they cross Mount Everest. Small little birds, 5 pounds. And here you are with the spirit of Hazrat Abdul Latif in your DNA, but you just don't know it. Sometimes it's the fault of people like me, our parents. If I haven't shown you how to fly, you are not to be blamed. This is not an innate behavior. You have to go through a trial. We now have to accept a challenge. Yes, there is risk. Yes, there will be eagles. Yes, there will be Mount Everest. But what's the alternative? You stay on the earth, right? You know, the ancestors of chickens used to fly. But then the chickens, their children stopped flying and they got domesticated. And that is why today chickens cannot fly. And you know what happens to domesticated chickens. My dear brothers, flap your wings. My sisters, flap your wings. You are born for that. You are not born to crawl on this earth. You are not born to cave in. You're not born to be afraid. You are not born to compromise your faith. Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ is full of optimism for you. Huzur says, he saw a kashaf, a vision. He says, मैंने इस कशफ की यही ताबीर की कि खुदा ताला बहुत से इनके कायम मुकाम पैदा फरमा देगा, हज़रत साहिबजादा अब्दुल लतीफ़ के. सो मैं यकीन रखता हूँ कि किसी वक्त मेरे इस कशफ की ताबीर ज़ाहिर हो जाएगी. He says, I saw a vision and I interpreted the vision that Allah will grant me a lot of subordinates, people who will be living the spirit of Abdul Latif, and I have complete conviction that a time will come that Allah will manifest the interpretation of that dream. My dear brothers and sisters, that time is now. We say, "Oh Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam," we testify that yes, you were right, your prophecy was right. This is the Messiah. He has actually brought faith down from the stars. Look at the Jamaat he has created, and oh Masih Maud alayhi salatu wassalam, we testify that yes, your vision was right. Yes, thousands and hundreds of thousands around the world, they're blacks and they're whites and they're Asians and they're Hispanics. They're men and they're women, they're old and they're young, they're refugees and they're naturalized citizens, but they all have the spirit of Abdul Latif in them. There is something more to the story. This is the day. This is the day of declaration. I told you it was a hot summer day in July. It was 14th of July when they were dragging Hazrat Sahibzada Abdul Latif into the streets of Kabul, when they were pelting him with stones, when they thought they had buried Islam and Ahmadiyyat. 14th of July, and here is 14th of July. They did not know. These were cranes. You can't bury a flock of cranes. They will fly. You can take down one. He was way more than that. His stature was bigger than Mount Everest. But yes, we have given, our cranes have also given lives right and left. You can never control, you can never bury that flock. It was 14th of July when he made that decision. And today those birds are flying in 209 countries. His decision, never to compromise on his faith. You put a gun next to my head, I'm not compromising on my faith. That's very American if you really think about it. The fear is in here, not in the Declaration of Independence. Don't blame America for this. This is not America's burden, it's ours. We just don't know what's in our DNA. So today, I would request you to cut off that leash. Unleash yourself. If you're a young person here, if you're youth, know that we love you and know that we trust you. Despite all the challenges, we trust you. But when you're online, when you're in colleges, when you're in your social events, when you happen to visit a club for a weekend, when you're with your friends, know that Allah is watching. Know that if you compromised your faith, Hazrat Sahibzada Abdul Latif could have done that in the dungeon and gotten more glory than you and I can ever imagine in the worldly sense. Know that he did not compromise. And look the glory Allah gave him. Allah will make you rise in this world. Your conviction of faith is not going to keep you back. You will still get the Nobel Prize. You will still be the CEO. Don't have this fear that somehow you will not be successful in life. But know that Allah is watching you. Today is the day of that declaration, 14th of July. If something has happened in the past, this be between you and Allah. But know that we trust you to fly over Mount Everest. When we are gone, it's you. You will continue. There will be a Khilafat. You will have to follow that Khilafat, and there will be a Mount Everest. You want it easy? Crawl on earth. Mothers, I know this is not all of the faith, but there are certain things that are our distinction. Don't compromise on your hijab. Please. Don't think that you are not ready. You are ready. Unleash that fear. Your children are watching you. Your children are flying with you. They'll forget how to fly. They'll become domesticated chickens. Please help them. It's difficult. That is why it's admirable. You have no idea the admiration we men have when you go out with that public declaration. Gosh, I wish there was anything more that was more inspiring than that in today's America. It's difficult, but please keep flying. And fathers, Hazrat Musleh Maud radiyallahu anhu said, because men are different, men are, we need numbers, we need measures, just tell me a goal and I'll score. Hazrat Musleh Maud said that if you want to find out, if you want a litmus test, whether you are giving precedence to your faith over worldly affairs, then do wasiyat. I'm not saying this. Hazrat Musleh Maud said this. 14 years ago, there's a reason Hazrat Khalifatul Masih reminded us of that. This is the date of decision, 14th of July. This is where it happens. Allah has given your children such wings that some of them are waqfeen no. How do you feel? Your children are flying over Mount Everest. They want you to join them. It's a family affair. Please. Sahibzada Abdul Latif gave away 100%. Nothing will happen, nothing bad will happen if we gave away our 10%. This is the day to rise and to fly. May Allah grant all of you the spiritual wings and the strength to climb Mount Everest in your life. May Allah grant you to live the legacy of Hazrat Sahibzada Abdul Latif and for generations to come. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.